American Fugitive by Shingo Zhang. Chapter 32 The Encounter. 3 armed policemen ran toward Ren-Yee and Wang. Ren-Yee grabbed Wang. Go home. Run. Only then did Wang see 4 men with guns coming toward him. He asked, What about you? Running toward a huge building on the left, Ren-Yee yelled without stopping. Don't worry about me. Wang looked back and limped away. Xiao and his 3 men ran after Ren-Yee. Wang stopped and looked anxiously at the chase. The building had a huge blue gate at the front, big enough to allow a jumbo jet to go through. Ren-Yee knew it was an aircraft maintenance facility. He saw a 2-story red brick building on front left, and a wooded area behind it. The red building looked old and no one was around it. Ren-Yee ran toward it. 2 policemen in tactical vests with assault rifles were in hot pursuit. The other policeman and Xiao Zichang ran behind. While running across the lawn in front of the brick building, Ren-Yee saw a big sign next to the front door, which read, Jinjiang Airport Branch of Quanzhou Public Security Bureau. He quickly turned to right and ran to the aircraft maintenance building. The 3 policemen and Xiao also turned and ran after Ren-Yee. One man slipped on the lawn and caused Xiao to trip and fall on the ground. The 2 men quickly got back up. Xiao touched his forehead and saw blood on his hand. The policeman said, Sorry. Xiao gave a loud order. Chase him. A side door of the maintenance building opened. A middle-aged woman in a pink dress walked out. Ren-Yee ran quickly and got to the door just before closing. He pulled it open and ran inside. 2 armed policemen in tactical vests came to the side door and could not open it. The 3rd policeman and Xiao Zichang ran toward the woman and pulled her back. Facing 4 men with guns in their hands, the woman turned pale with fear in her eyes. With shaking hands, she took out a card from a handbag and unlocked the door. 3 armed policemen and Xiao Zichang got inside the building. They found themselves in a very long and empty corridor, with many doors on both sides. The 4 men were at a loss and didn't know where to start their search. They opened each door without a clue of what's inside. One man opened a door and found it was a storage room, with nobody inside. Another man opened another door and found it was a lounge room, with a mini kitchen and 3 rows of tables and chairs. The policeman asked 2 young workers sitting at a table, Did anyone come in a few moments ago? No, the 2 workers replied. The policeman left the lounge. The 4 men continued their search. It seemed to the 4 men that Ren-Yee could be behind every door. After searching several more doors, a young worker with black-rimmed glasses entered the corridor about 20 meters away. Xiao Zichang ran over immediately. He grabbed the worker's arm and asked him quickly, What is this place? The worker replied, Aircraft maintenance facility. Did you see a man in a gray shirt? Yes. He was in the big room. The 3 policemen ran toward the worker. The worker pushed open a double door. Xiao Zichang and 3 policemen entered the big room, which was a maintenance hangar 8 stories high. They saw a Boeing 747 passenger plane and lots of workers servicing different parts of the plane. Xiao and his men walked to the right-hand side. The fuselage and the right wing were surrounded by scaffoldings. Further away was an 8-story high, over 60 meters wide hangar door. Under the fuselage, there are 5 technicians working on the landing gears. Several workers searched for defects on the outer skin of the fuselage on a high platform. 2 workers walked on the wing looking for damages. All the technicians and mechanics wore navy blue overalls. Xiao told one worker, Hurry up and bring your manager here. The worker ran back to the corridor. Xiao told one policeman, Report the situation to Commander Zhong. Contact the Fujian Armed Police Corps and ask them to send people here. He ordered another policeman holding an assault rifle. You stay at that double door. Make sure nobody leaves here. The workers noticed Xiao and the 3 armed policemen. They stopped their work and looked at Xiao. Xiao pointed at the big gate and shouted at the workers, Move to the gate, and stand over there. The worker in black-rimmed glasses ran back with a male manager. Panting, the manager said, "No. Please don't. Don't shoot. A bullet can wreck an engine worth hundreds of millions of yuans." With a blood stain on his left cheek, Xiao didn't seem to hear the manager's request, and told the manager loudly, "A fugitive in a gray shirt is hiding here. You're a worker and you need to move to the gate." The manager pleaded again, "Don't shoot." Then he loudly ordered all the workers to walk toward the gate. 2 workers inspecting the wing for defects walked toward the fuselage, then onto the platform and descended with other workers. A policeman wearing a tactical vest and holding an assault rifle walked into the fuselage from the platform. He saw a few workers removing the chairs in the economy class cabin. 2 workers were moving a 3-person seat toward the rear cabin door. Policeman said, "Put it down. Get out of here. Go to the gate and wait for order." A worker asked, "What happened?" The policeman replied, "A fugitive came in. We want a complete search." The workers laid the seat down on floor and walked toward the cabin door. Another policeman holding a handgun, but without a tactical vest, came in. He saw 6 rows of window seats, some removed, and a half-removed kitchen in the middle of the fuselage. The 2 policemen walked toward the seats and carefully looking at everything around them. Suddenly, 2 refrigerators slid towards the 2 men, and they fell to the floor. Ren-Yee rushed out from the kitchen and quickly stepped on the right hand of the man wearing a vest, and snatched his rifle. As the second man with the handgun got up, Ren-Yee held the barrel of the rifle with both hands and swung the rifle at him, hitting his arm, and his handgun fell to the floor. The second man jumped at Ren-Yee, who stepped back and bumped into the first policeman who just stood up. He fell to the floor again. Ren-Yee raised the rifle up and hit the jaw of the second policeman, who staggered a couple of steps back and fell on the floor. As Ren-Yee found his balance and about to catch a breath, Xiao ran into the fuselage and fired 2 shots at Ren-Yee. 1 shot hit the rifle in Ren-Yee's hand. Ren-Yee staggered a step back, and the rifle fell on the floor. Xiao approached carefully, and Ren-Yee backed away. The first policeman in tactical vest stood up. Ren-Yee quickly pulled him close and pushed him toward Xiao. Xiao stumbled back a couple of steps before restoring balance. The policeman in vest also found balance. The 2 approached Ren-Yee together. Ren-Yee backed up to a big opening where an escape door used to be. The 2 men moved closer. Ren-Yee walked out of the fuselage and on to the right wing. The 2 men also got onto the wing. Ren-Yee retreated toward the tip of the wing. Dozens of workers stood near the big gate, staring at the confrontation between the policeman and Ren-Yee. The policeman guarding the double door ran toward the right wing. If Ren-Yee had jumped off the wing, which was 3 stories high, he could have died or would have been caught right away. Xiao pointed his gun at Ren-Yee and shouted, Ren-Yee! Raise your hands and walk over obediently." Ren-Yee said, "I won't give you the recording. The audio tape is a state secret. You must hand it over. Someone murdered Lin Biao. I want to reveal the truth." "What do you know about truth?" Xiao shouted disdainfully. "No truth, no justice. Although the mesh size is big, the net of law does not leak. There is no way you can escape here." Xiao waved at the policeman on his left. The man moved closer. Ren-Yee did not move. The man moved again, and suddenly threw a feint and a jab, hitting Ren-Yee's left cheek. Ren-Yee's nose started bleeding. He took a few steps back, then charged towards the policeman, hitting the man's chest. The policeman fell on the wing. Ren-Yee jumped on top of the man and punched his face and jaw, until his nose began bleeding. The policeman punched Ren-Yee in the abdomen. Ren-Yee fell sideways on the wing in pain. Both men struggled to their feet. Both were bleeding. Xiao moved around, and wanted to join the fight. But the wing had only space for 2 fighters. The twisted face of the policeman showed contempt for Ren-Yee, and his stares were full of hatred. Ren-Yee retreated a few steps again, toward the tip of the wing. The 2 men looked at each other with vicious and violent intention. The policeman suddenly charged at Ren-Yee, who dodged by moving his body to left. The policeman hit the corner of Ren-Yee's right shoulder, then rolled and fell. His body rolled off the wing and landed on a scaffold platform 3 meters below. He laid on the platform in pain. Xiao was outraged and roared. You! He walked towards Ren-Yee and fired one shot, which hit Ren-Yee's right arm. Ren-Yee fell on the wing. He glanced at his right arm, which was bleeding. Xiao and his gun got closer. Ren-Yee didn't move. Lying on the wing, Ren-Yee saw 2 temporary steel cables, which workers used to attach their safety cable. When Xiao approached again, Ren-Yee pulled the cable. Xiao tripped and fell. His handgun fell out, bounced on the wing a few times, and fell on the concrete floor below with a clang. Ren-Yee took the opportunity to get up and move toward the fuselage. Xiao scrambled up. Ren-Yee punched his face hard. Xiao fell again. Ren-Yee said, "Now you get a taste of my fist." When Ren-Yee leaned over and was about to punch Xiao again, sound of some motors started. Ren-Yee turned around and saw the middle of the big gate slid open. A few armed policemen with assault rifles walked in. As the door opened wider, more came in. Ren-Yee immediately ran toward the fuselage. Entering the fuselage, he saw the policeman without tactical vest just got up from the floor. Ren-Yee got around him and ran to the business class area. He lifted a square-shaped cover on the floor and saw a staircase to the cargo area below. He descended down the stairs quickly. In the cargo area, he ran toward a door, took the ladder, and descended to the ground. Dozens of armed policemen armed with assault rifles saw Ren-Yee and started chasing him. Ren-Yee ran toward the double door. The policeman in tactical vest on the ground saw Ren-Yee. He raced toward the double door. Ren-Yee and the policeman approached the door around the same time. The policeman stretched out to catch Ren-Yee, who moved his body to avoid. The policeman fell to the ground in pain. Pushing through the door, Ren-Yee got into the long corridor and turned right. Then he turned left and entered a short corridor. He opened another door and got out of the aircraft maintenance building. Ren-Yee saw an airstrip on the far right and ran toward it. 6 policemen got out of the building and continued their chase. The policemen fired several shots at Ren-Yee. Ren-Yee hurried into the parking lot next to the road and ran amid the cars. That did not stop the policemen's shooting. Ren-Yee was near the end of the parking lot and saw a taxiway in front, which leads to an airstrip. He knew that Huang Yongmao's Cessna was parked on the other side of the maintenance building. He turned right and ran on a big lawn, trying to get around the maintenance building. The gunfire from the police continued. Ren-Yee suddenly heard the sound of an airplane engine. He looked left as he ran and saw a Cessna taxiing toward him on the taxiway. He felt a burst of energy spreading through his entire body, and he knew that was Huang Yongmao. Ren-Yee ran toward the taxiway. Cessna reduced its speed. Ren-Yee caught up with Cessna, opened its passenger side door, and got inside the plane. Huang Yongmao immediately increased the speed. Ren-Yee gasped and managed to say, "Thank you so much." Huang said, "I didn't think you could escape until I heard gunshots." Ren-Yee panted and said nothing. Ren-Yee turned around and saw the policemen who chased him were left further and further behind. Ren-Yee said, "You can get off here. They will send fighters to intercept me." Huang asked, "How do you deal with that?" "Fly close to the ground." Ren-Yee took a look at the wound on his right arm. He asked, "Do you have a handkerchief?" Huang took out a light green handkerchief from a pocket. He turned to Ren-Yee temporarily and quickly tied the handkerchief over the wound on Ren-Yee's right arm. Ren-Yee said, "That's great. Thanks." Cessna turned left into a runway at a high speed, causing its left rear wheel off ground temporarily, and the right wing tip almost touched the ground. On the runway, Cessna accelerated further. Suddenly 3 armored vehicles came from the left-hand side. They entered the runway and stopped, blocking it. Cessna veered off the right edge of the runway, avoiding a collision with the armored vehicles. Cessna crossed a patch of lawn and dashed onto the second runway. The 3 police vehicles rushed to the second runway behind Cessna. After accelerating on the second runway, Cessna lifted off. 4 more police vehicles drove into the second runway. But they were too late to block the Cessna. On the plane, Ren-Yee looked back and breathed a sigh of relief. He smiled at Huang Yongmao. The plane was climbing. Ren-Yee asked, "How far away is Kaohsiung?" 200 kilometers. Huang replied. "Almost," Ren-Yee said. "It will take 40 minutes. That's too far." During those 40 minutes, they could be shot down by missiles. Huang asked, "Go to Kinmen Island?" "Kinmen Island. It's safer." "Good. Don't fly high." In order to avoid ground radar tracking, Huang flew Cessna at a low altitude, like Pan Jingyin, who flew at low altitude with Lin Biao and others on board in 1971. The Air Force Xinjiang Command Center received a report immediately after the Cessna took off. An order was sent to a fighter squadron on standby in Shishir to intercept the Cessna. At the Air Force Shishir base, 2 fighter pilots and a group of ground crews ran toward the airfield immediately after they received the order. Through the GPS screen on the Cessna, Ren-Yee saw that it was flying south. The plane flew over Hongsua and continued to the south. A few minutes later, Cessna flew at low altitude to the east of Diju Mountain. On 2 runways at the Shishir Air Force Base, 2 fighter airplanes took off at the same time. Cessna continued to fly south. Minutes later, Cessna entered the East China Sea. 2 fighters were chasing Cessna. Both pilots used radar to search for Cessna in the air. As soon as they saw the Cessna, alarms went off in the cockpit, which told the pilots that the planes were about to enter enemy sky. Both fighter planes turned and flew inland. One pilot shouted, "Shoot!" Cessna entered the sky over Kinmen Island. Ren-Yee raised his hands and shouted excitedly, "Kinmen! It's Kinmen!" Minutes later, Cessna landed smoothly at Changi Airport. Inside Cessna, Huang said, "We are safe now. Brother, you saved my life. When I heard the gunshots, I knew it must be you." Huang smiled. "Thank God!" Ho Ren-Yee and Huang Yongmao got off the Cessna. They were taken away by security guards at Changi Airport. After making a statement at an office, Ren-Yee was taken to Kinmen Hospital. The doctor treated the wound on Ren-Yee's arm. In the afternoon, Ren-Yee called Jin Yong-Shee with his cell phone. Yong-Shee was very happy. After the call, Ren-Yee thought about how Lin Jianhan obtained the information about the audio tape from Xingdichuan totally by chance, how Lin Jianhan and Lin Jianyou stole the cassette in the middle of a night, how Chen Deming carried messages between Lin Jianhan and himself, how Lin Jianhan, Lu Dingfeng and himself made careful plan for getting the cassette the second time, how Luo Yanfang persuaded Sun Peiwen and obtained the cassette, how Tan Zhaohui and Li Baoxing gave him a place to stay the second time, how he stole an armed police patrol boat and escaped Wuhan, and how Huang Yongmao got him out of China. Ren-Yee cried. Who could say God didn't help in any of the endeavors? In the evening, the Kunming long-distance bus station was surrounded by policemen, who checked every passenger going in and out. A bus entered the station. Passengers inside began to line up for exit. While standing in line, Qin Geilan took out Ren-Yee's cell phone and asked Duan Fuyuan, "What should I do?" Duan took the cell phone and turned it on. He put the cell phone in a side pocket of a duffel bag carried by a soldier in front of him. Qin Geilan chuckled, covering her mouth with a hand. Looking left and then right, the soldier was quite relaxed, completely unaware of what had happened. Qin knew in her head what would happen. A bunch of policemen would push the soldier down to the ground, arrest him, and lock him up in a cell. After getting off the bus, Duan Fuyuan and Qin Geilan walked quickly to the exit, leaving the soldier behind. They passed the police checkpoint without a problem, and quickly left the bus station. At night, in the living room, Jin Yusong and Xu Shufan talked with their daughter Jin Yong-Shee over phones. Yong-Shee recounted what Ho Ren-Yee went through in the last few days, including how he went from Wuhan to Huarong, then to Jinjiang International Airport, and finally arriving at Kinmen Island. Jin Yusong smiled as he listened. Xu Shufan wiped her happy tears with a handkerchief. Their worry for son-in-law ended completely. After the call, Jin Yong-Shee immediately called Ren-Yee's parents, informing them the good news. On the phone, Jin Yong-Shee told Ren-Yee's parents what happened in the last few days. Ren-Yee's parents both shed tears of joy. Ren-Yee's father said, "It's good he is safe now." At the end, Mr. Jin said, "Ren-Yee is a martial artist as well as a scholar. He is good in everything." The next day, through a prearranged intermediary, Ren-Yee sent a message to Luo Yanfang about his arrival at Kinmen Island. Yanfang was very happy to learn that Ren-Yee had escaped to safety. However, she was also in distress since she knew that brother Ren-Yee might not return to China for many years. Yanfang felt lonely. Interacting with Ren-Yee, she realized there were good men out there, and she should divorce Xiao Zichang quickly. Since then, she began to have confidence in herself, and to have hope for the future. Luo Yanfang didn't know when the Public Security Bureau would stop looking for her. She hoped Ren-Yee could contact her often. However, Ren-Yee would go home, with his wife and child. "Will he think of me?" Yanfang remembered the scene in which Ren-Yee said his last farewell. "You are a brave woman. He really knows how to talk to a woman. Find a way to live." That was the only sentence which is true. 2 days later, Ren-Yee returned to his California home. Friends came to Ren-Yee's house, celebrating his successful escape from China, which lasted until 11 o'clock at night. Later that night, lying in bed in their bedroom, Ren-Yee and Yong-Shee enjoyed their intimacy after a long separation. Yong-Shee said, "I didn't respect you enough in the past. Let's start over again. All right?" "Sure. I am going to take a few days off, taking care of you at home." "Really? Do you want me to take some time off?" Ren-Yee smiled. "So that was a teaser? If needed, I would ask for a leave." "What about your classes? Find a substitute. Family first." Ren-Yee turned, touched Yong-Shee's forehead with his right hand, and said, "Do you have a fever?" Yong-Shee laughed. "That was really the first time I had such a thought." "You've changed?" Yong-Shee asked. "Have you changed?" Ren-Yee thought of Luo Yanfang. The scene on Luojia Mountain where they romped like juveniles flashed back. He could not utter a word for a moment. Then he said, "No." He turned to lie on his back. Yong-Shee hugged him. Ren-Yee raised his injured right arm and gently hugged his wife. Ren-Yee thought about his promise to Lin Jianhan in a hospital room to bring the recording out of China. Finding the reason behind Lin Biao's death had been his top priority since he left the U.S. The next morning, Ren-Yee found a company called Audio Restoration Center on the web. At noon, he took public transit to the company office in San Francisco, and gave the cassette to the company. 1 day later, the company successfully restored the sound on the cassette, and transferred the sound on to a USB drive. Ren-Yee went to the company office again, and took back the cassette and a USB drive provided by the company. Ren-Yee spent a day producing a transcript of the recorded voices from the USB drive. He would add the transcript to his book. 2 days later, Ren-Yee held a press conference in the Grand Conference Hall in Oakland Marriott Hotel. On the podium, Ren-Yee and Shen Hanning sat by a table. Shen Hanning was a gray-haired professor on Chinese history and an expert on Sino-American affairs. The conference hall was filled with reporters and ordinary people. Among them were Jin Yong-Shee and Old Wan. Ren-Yee said, "The airplane, Chinese Air Force 256, had a 4-member crew at that night, pilot Pan Jingyin, and 3 mechanics Li Ping, Tai Qiliang, Zhang Yankue. Passengers were Lin Biao Yi-kun, Lin Liguo, Lin Liguo's friend Liu Peifeng, and Lin Biao's limousine driver Yang Zhenggang. Liu Peifeng carried a transceiver that belonged to the Joint Fleet, onto the plane. He put the transceiver inside the cockpit and turned on the microphone attached to it. Huang Yongkui, a member of the Joint Fleet in Beijing, received the signal from the transceiver and recorded the voices on audio cassettes. Behind the cockpit was a service cabin where the front boarding gate was also located. Behind that was a VIP cabin, followed by a passenger cabin, where the rear boarding gate was also located. The plane was a Trident 1E passenger plane produced by British company Hawker Siddeley in the 1960s. Under normal circumstances, there should have been a 5-people crew inside the cockpit: pilot, first co-pilot, second co-pilot, flight engineer, navigator, and communication operator. But the first co-pilot, the second co-pilot, navigator, and communication operator did not get on the plane. The fate of the flight could have been altered if the 4 missing crew members were inside the cockpit. I will play the recording of the conversations in the cockpit before the crash. At the beginning of this recording, there were 3 people in the cockpit: Pan Jingyin, the captain and pilot; Li Ping, the flight engineer; and Yang Zhengang, Lin Biao's limousine driver. Ren-Yee started playing the recording using a laptop on the table.